Hey friends, if you saw my last video, I was basically talking about the importance of sharing stories. Like, it's therapeutic, the healing power, and you can connect to other people, let them know they're not alone. And I'm starting off by um, sharing like some of the traumas and challenges and stuff that I've been through in my life. And my first video talked about the first two times I was like molested by two different cousins, etc. But now I want to do, and this is going to be just like a quick kind of overview video because my story is really long and really intense, and there's a lot to it, and I'll have to break it down in the future. But right now, I'm just in the mood to share, and so I want to try and get like as much out on a bunch of different things as I can while I'm in that zone. Anyways, so yeah, I was sexually assaulted by two different cousins. One as a toddler and one like as a small child, like somewhere between first and third grade or something like that. But when I was in the seventh grade, I moved in with my mom and her husband at the time. And the first 6 or 8 months that I was with them, I mean, I loved the dude that she was married to. He was like the stereotypical TV dad that uh, coached. Like he got me into sports. He coached my softball team. He talked to me about the future in college, military. Talked to me. Like kind of more on an adult level. Was like one of the first adults to do that. Told me a lot of interesting things. Like I thought of him like one of my best friends and like a father figure. Um, But thinking back to it, like there were some weird signs in a few places that adult me would now recognize as being, kind of like a sketch or like signs of worse things to come. But anyways, what ended up happening, and I think I can't remember if I was 12 or 13. I think it was 13. Yeah, it was 13. I've got the memory of a goldfish, so I have to like write everything down, and thankfully, like I do have like I mean I kept a very um, detailed um, count like journal planner thing, and I did journal a lot when I was young, so I have all these records and things that I can go back on to help refresh my memory and stuff. But anyways, what ended up happening is towards the end of seventh grade, he came home one night drunk. He'd been at the comedy club in Birmingham and came home a little bit intoxicated. And I was already in bed, either asleep or trying to go to sleep. I think I was asleep. And he came in, and I remember him waking me up and taking me by the arm and leading me into his room. And um, he led me into his room, and at first I didn't think anything was wrong, but he sat me on the bed, and then he went to the sink and he started to like I don't know clean himself up and kind of take some stuff off and everything, and my spidey senses went off, and I didn't know what was going to happen, but I immediately felt terrified and fear. And I don't know how I did it because it was like the strength left my body or whatever, and I was so terrified. But I tried to flee, and I honestly can't remember if I walked or I crawled to the door, which he had shut behind us. But I remember I made it to the door. I made it to the door and I got my hand on the doorknob, and it was like the strength completely left my body. Like I collapsed on the floor. I mean, I had my hand there. Mentally, I wanted to open that door and get out, but physically, I feel like my body betrayed me. Um, and like I was crying and all that kind of stuff, and like, please don't do this or whatever. And he came and got me and took me to the bed and then raped me. And I'm pretty sure I probably disassociated during a good chunk of that because I kind of remember like my memory is of basically like my consciousness, like a third person, like seeing me on the bed being raped. And that was something I experienced a lot when I would rape. Like I would try and leave my body consciously. I did all kinds of like I try and leave my body, or often if he didn't stop me, I would put like a pillow over my face so I didn't have to see him, and I could just try and block everything out. But that first night, like when he was done, he let me leave the room, and I think I can't remember if I went straight to the bathroom or to my room first. I think I went straight to the bathroom, and I remember like trying to like clean myself really well, like, crying and, just trying to like wash him off of me and stuff. And I um, eventually went in my room and I pulled out my planner and I wrote down nightmare about died, um, because that is how I felt about that experience. I felt like my soul was being crushed. And I guess I eventually fell asleep. And when I woke up the next morning, there was like, I don't know, there was money on my nightstand, like that makes up for what's happening. But, anyways, that was the beginning of what would be like almost 2 years, or maybe a little over 2 years of him raping me. I mean, almost every week, sometimes multiple times a week, and it would be at home. Sometimes he'd drive us out somewhere. He'd like to take me on trips with him to places. Um, he he liked to like spoil me and like buy me things. He liked to take me to shops and have me model clothing for him. He liked to take me to get my hair and my nails done. He liked to take me out and show me off. Um, we even went out to dinner with a friend of his one time, and when we got in the car after dinner, because I had stepped away to go to the bathroom or something, when I got in the car after dinner, he was bragging to me about how his friend had offered him money to let him sleep with me. But my stepfather was like, nope, she's mine. Which now that I'm an adult, I'm like, was he fucking part of some sort of like sex trafficking ring or something? I don't know, because he had some sketch friends, and the fact that we went out on that dinner and that dude obviously knew what was going on because he asked to basically buy me. Um, I don't know, that is a revelation or a thought that I only realized a couple of years ago after hearing about all this crazy, like the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, and you know, discovering that there are rings like that. Because I just never, I never thought that they were like organized groups that do this kind of stuff. Anyways, on the outside, to everybody that saw what was going on, or they didn't see what was going on. On the outside, we appeared to be a very happy family. Well, mostly. My mom and my siblings were um, hostile towards me, isn't the right word, but what they saw my ex stepfather spoiling me and treating me like a favorite, and him treating them like crap. And they didn't know why, so it's not their fault they respond this way. But unfortunately, like I did get like I felt a lot of grief because of it, which really sucked because that just isolated me from my family further and made it harder for me to feel comfortable like coming out about stuff. But it's one of those things that's complicated because I think about it a lot, about why I reacted the way I did. And I mean, I know why I didn't come out about it sooner, but just to sort of go into some of the details a little bit. I think most of the time what I experienced was I would disassociate during the acts and stuff, and when things would be over and I would feel out of danger, it's like a switch in my brain would flip off, and would forget. I would forget that he was a monster, basically. And I would just remember that, he was my stepfather and my friend, and I loved him. And when I did remember things without feeling um, in danger, my wish was just like, I want the monster to leave. I just want my stepdad. I just want my friend back. Like my brain kind of divided him into two people, and it was like, I just want him to stop. Like I still want a relationship with him. I still love him. Like a dad. Um, I just want him to stop hurting me. Um, I want the monster to go away. And from what I've been told from like counselors and stuff that work with assault victims, especially those that are assaulted by family members and stuff, like that is like that is a common thing. And part of why a lot of people don't come out about it, because you love this person that's hurting you even though they're hurting you, and you don't really want to punish them, and you don't really want to like upset your family dynamic. You just want them to stop, and and in my case also not hurt anybody else. But man, I've got so many freaking stories from that period. I've done a little photography work with it, but I want to do more. It's just like, I struggle because I have so many things that I want to get out, like so many stories, so much work and stuff, and it is a struggle to pick and choose because they're all important and stuff. But anyways, here's me trying to get stuff out now. Um, and I've talked about this stuff before, but it's always been talking about it with like, specific people or groups, or in front of a jury, because I did go through the legal stuff. But I want to start making more videos and other things, maybe some blog posts and stuff like that about it, because I would really like for my stories to get out publicly. Um, I've always felt that I do, in fact, have like a really interesting story that could help a lot of people. Is also like, I mean, could make a great freaking movie because I mean, like, it's just crazy. Um, but I think my stories could help people, and I'd really like to get them out. And I mean, for years I have been trying to freaking sign up to be like a freaking speaker, with like Rain or something, but like they don't accept new people or whatever. And it's just like, well, where the hell can I, like, where the hell can I share my stories? Oh, fuck it, share them on the internet. Hopefully somebody will come across them. But yeah, so going back to like some of the experiences I had, I mean, like my brain would turn off and forget that I was in danger when I didn't feel like I was in danger. And so I understand why it was very difficult for people to realize that something was happening to me. Because if I didn't feel in danger, then I was a happy, loving teen, and I would hug on my stepfather and smile and all of that kind of stuff. It was when we were alone that I switched and I remembered what was going on and stuff. And then, kind of related to memory, another interesting thing is, um, I do think I experienced like some memory loss or memory trauma at the time. Like, I know the first time it happened, I lost almost an entire week. Like, I just blacked out. Um, I guess my brain was just like in trauma from what had happened. And I think I had some experiences, more experiences like that. But like that first time it happened was like a long, it was like I lost a week. Um, but yeah, and unfortunately, it kept going on for years. And my stepfather said all kinds of crazy ass shit to try and control me. He would tell me things like, I remember him telling me, "Oh, well, back in the biblical days, fathers, had sex with their daughters, and I think he said they had children with them too, or something like that. I don't know about any of that stuff, but he would bring that up, and then he would talk about, if you tell anybody, he told me constantly never to write anything down, and I didn't write down as much as I would like, but I'm my actual father's daughter, and if I can document everything, at least a lot of stuff. Uh, and it's so appropriate that my last name is now Record because I am definitely a record keeper. Um, but he knew exactly how to play me because he knew I grew up in poverty, and my mom and siblings, like, my mom was working, but we were reliant on him, we were dependent on him. And so he would talk to me about how, if I told anyone, that my family wouldn't have anywhere to go, we'd live on the streets and stuff like that. So one of the reasons I kept my mouth shut, I mean, a lot of the reasons I kept my mouth shut was to protect my family. I felt like it. I don't know why, but I felt like it was my job to protect him. I mean, I've just always felt like a guardian for other people, even though now as an adult I realize that as a child, like, that's not a burden that I should have taken on. However, I will say that I am still proud of myself for taking on those burdens, even if it's something that I don't think a child should have to take on. But I'm proud of myself for, at least having my heart in the right place. I just wish I would have been like a little more mentally advanced to, to kind of realize, like, hey, this person is manipulating you. They probably won't actually do these things that they're threatening to do, that sort of thing. But when you're young and someone, threatens you and stuff, you can't help but believe them, or be afraid and believe them. But yeah, so he'd talk about how, our family would be homeless and stuff like that. And there were lots of other things that he said too. But I know another big one for me was, I don't know, for some reason I was like crazy obsessed with like loyalty. as a kid. Like after my parents got divorced, like I don't know, became like just ridiculously like rigid about like, faithfulness and stuff like that. And I didn't want to tell my mom that her husband was cheating on her. You know, it's so ridiculous to me now because now I'm an adult. I'm like, I can't believe I was more worried about my mom being hurt. I can't believe I was so naive to think that what my mom would actually focus on would be the fact that her husband was cheating on her and not the fact that her daughter was being assaulted. So I mean, like I am smart, guys, but sometimes I'm really dumb. It just, or oblivious. Just depends on the thing. But yeah, he continued, like I think he tried to control me by like buying me things and giving me money and stuff. And then, and, just keeping a close eye on me and stuff. But it's kind of crazy. I mean, just how much stuff happened. And now that I'm older, I'm like, I do actually think if anyone had had like their spidey senses on, that there were a lot of signs that something was going on. I mean, some people did say things about how they thought it was inappropriate that a grown man was like, taking a girl my age to X, Y, or Z, and anyways, eventually, I'm gonna fast forward through this. Eventually, so the rape went on for about 2 years, and so it started at the end of seventh grade, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I have to go look at my calendar. If I came out about it, I think I came out about it in the ninth grade. Might have been early 10th grade, but I think I came out about it in the ninth grade. So yeah, that would match up about 2 years. Um, I was in an emotional state, and complaining to God about all of the shit that I had been through in my life, and like why the fuck have I had like all of these things going on, from being assaulted by two cousins, growing up in poverty, having a whole bunch of other like issues with my family and feeling isolated, and other things that had happened to me and stuff. And then the rape, and then the thing that like the straw on the camel's back was I got into a fight with my boyfriend, who I really loved and cared about at the time. And I was just like, I just exploded. It's so funny that that is the thing that caused me to come out about everything. But I'm thankful for it. It's like, like, man, being a teenager, all that angst. I'm glad not to be there anymore. But thinking back on it, I was like, man, that's funny as hell. Kind of fun. But I just snapped, and I can't remember who the first person I called was. I may have called my best friend first, and I think she told me that I should talk to an adult. And so, out of all the adults that I could have talked to, I decided to call my boyfriend's mother. I don't know. I do know why I did that, but I don't. Anyways, but I called her. She came over to the house. We talked, and then she told me I needed to tell family members. So I told one of my aunts. I could not tell my mom. And either a day or a few days later, my aunt arranged for my mom to meet up with her in a different town. Like we went to a mall, and basically me and whichever siblings were with us, like we went and we like walked around the mall while my aunt took my mom off to have a private conversation and let her know what I had said. And then very quickly, what happened is I believe like the very next day, or at least that week, um, I was guided to a police station to file a report. And I remember talking to a detective, and I've got a copy of the report somewhere. And sometimes it's so bizarre to like go read it because it's like most of this stuff feels like a completely different life. And sometimes I'm like, did I really live that? I mean, I know that I did, but it's yeah, it's surreal sometimes because I mean, I feel like I lived a freaking movie with all the stuff that happened, but um, I am trying to be quick with this, so let me move on. But yeah, so that began a long series of being in and out of court, trying to get a court date, restraining orders, in and out of counseling offices, having to talk about stuff like nonstop and answer questions or whatever. And my ex stepfather, he's a sleazeball, and he had a really good lawyer that kept getting the case like postponed and postponed and postponed. And I had to do something. I remember having to do something called like a grand jury. Like I had to, I mean, basically it was like my stepfather wasn't in this one, but I had to go into a courtroom and talk about everything and testify in front of a judge and a jury and then, decide whether they believe me or not in order for them to do something to help force our actual court date to happen. If anyone actually knows what that is, let me know because a lot of the stuff that I went through as a teen, like I was in such a state of trauma and all of that. I just followed, I just let people lead me because I didn't know what was going on. Now that I'm adult, I'm trying to understand, okay, what were all these things that I did and that I went through so I can understand that process and where things like broke down and stuff like that. But anyways, so eventually, and by eventually I mean the end of my senior year of high school, we finally make it to court. And I just want to point out here that, the rape began in the seventh grade and went on through seventh, eighth, and part of ninth. And then I came out about it, immediately had to go through all these like, legal stuff and counseling and constant things in front of judges and stuff. And then at the end of my senior year of high school, we finally go to court. And, I just want to say, like, there have been times in my life where I have been really hard on myself because I was not as far along as other people. Like it took me forever to get through college. Um, uh, there are a lot of gaps in, well, my early education and like life experiences and stuff. There are a lot of things that I struggled with, and I felt so much like guilt and shame and responsibility for that for a long time, but now that I'm older, it's like I fucking went through hell. I went through hell and it lasted forever. I've got like 10 years that I call my dark ages, and, most people don't know about this stuff because, they don't, we don't know what's going on in each other's lives and stuff like this or whatever. But, like I'm so mad that I was so hard on myself and that it took me so long to kind of like to stop beating myself up for what happened to me and for how it affected like the course of, I mean, not the rest of my life, but I mean, ultimately it affected the rest of my life because I still am trying to play catch up from the things that happened to me. Man, there was this one time I was talking to this person at a conference about how much I loved like education and stuff and learning or whatever. And man, they said something to me about the fact, like they asked me how old I was, and basically like, where I was at my education. And then they said something like kind of smart ass like or whatever about, implying like where I was at. And man, I feel a little bad for my professors who were there that got to see me explode. But I let that dude have it. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry that I was fucking raped for years and then in and out of court and went through all kinds of fucking trauma. And I don't meet your fucking timeline, guys. I mean, I'm sure I'm glad that didn't happen to you. Anyways, I don't normally uh, try or even desire to put people in their place. I think that he got it by the end, and I do think he apologized. But I'm still really fucking pissed off about it. That kind of like ignorance and just assuming that everybody, know's life is the same and that people don't encounter certain challenges and stuff. And that's also, and just to get derailed, I mean, that is a big part of why I decided that I wanted to go into education because when I did eventually get into college, I feel like it helped. I feel like my education helped heal me in a lot of ways. But I struggled a ton. I only had a few professors that like actually helped me. I couldn't talk about things, and I felt like I was way slower than other people. But thankfully, I had some professors that kept inspiring and motivating me, so that I wouldn't give up on myself. And and I realized that we don't all develop at the same pace. I mean, even if you have the same life experiences, I mean, you might be somewhere different on, you might be neurodivergent or, I mean, we're all on the spectrum, but you might have some difficulties with things, and I did have difficulties with things. Um, eh, but then so many people go through some sort of trauma or abuse when they're young, and that's obviously going to affect them, so expecting like everybody to be able to like go into college and do it all at the exact same pace and level or whatever, some people just it takes longer. And anyways, that's one of the reasons I want to go into education so that I could help those students. I don't really believe in no child left behind, but I do believe in not giving up on people. So, but no child. It's like we need to change the definition of that because I mean, the no child left behind is like you can't progress for the other people or whatever. And I'm just like, just you need different things for different people, and also not don't put everybody on the same path or schedule or whatever. But that's a completely different subject. Anyways, yeah, so we go to court my senior year of high school, and man, I don't know how I passed high school because I'm pretty sure I missed 30 something days that year, but they knew what was going on with me, so I guess that's why they were so lenient. But and I think we spent 5 days in court, with him and his family. And some of my family were there. I'm thankful for that. Some friends, and there were some people I didn't know that came and sat on our side of the room. That I feel like one of them was probably a victim of his, because she had been a girlfriend of one of his sons, and it was very. We definitely noticed that she sat on our side, even if it was in the back. And oh my God, I wish that our court case had been recorded because it was pretty fascinating and amazing and intense. Um, I had a very good lawyer, and I'm so thankful for him. And he was able to just like see through all of the lies, deceptions, and strategies that my stepfather and his lawyer were trying to do. I mean, he freaking brought a whiteboard into the courtroom one day, made like category list on it, and started like put like labeling like all the witnesses and stuff, and be like, oh, you're doing this and this. And anyways, there's all kinds of crazy stories related to that. I'll talk more about that sometime. But anyways, long story short, we took him to court. We tried to get him on two of the counts that we had like the most evidence for. One being the very first time it happened, because I had written it down in my calendar and I remembered that one really well. And the other time being an occasion where he had taken me to the comedy club in Birmingham to see Pauly Shore, which was really cool. And I had worn a very distinctive, like sparkly beige dress. And when we had gotten back to Aniana, Alabama, which is where we lived at the time, we were only like 10 minutes away from our house. And he basically like went down some old roads and pulled into the woods, like on a dirt road or whatever, so that he could rape me. Well, while we were there, like right after he had basically like finished up, a police car pulls up, and I very quickly like stuff my panties under the seat so that they can't see them. And like he fixes himself, and they come to the car, and I remember them coming to the car and like looking around and stuff like that, and I was nervous about it. And they asked him what we're doing, and he had told them that I had needed to pee really bad and I couldn't make it all the way home. And um, they, like a year or two later when it came out about this, like they remembered that very well because they said it didn't feel right because we were so close to home. We were really far out in the woods for this, and they remembered that I was dressed up fancy and stuff, and I still had the dress to help jog the memory and that sort of thing. And so those were the two counts that we tried to get him on. And unfortunately, we did not he was not found guilty for the first count because I had the date off by one day, and which is totally understandable because so what I remembered was that it happened the day before he went on a cruise. I thought it was the day before he went on a Caribbean cruise, but what actually happened was it was the day before he went on a lake cruise, and then the very next day he and my mother went on a Caribbean cruise. So I mean, it was the day before a cruise, but it was the wrong cruise. But like I said, when that first time happened, I kind of like blacked out and stuff and lost a lot of stuff. And so even though we could explain that, like on the paperwork, the date was wrong, so they threw that one out. But thankfully, they found him guilty on the other one, because those police officers showed up as witnesses, and it was pretty hilarious watching my stepfather and his lawyer trying to accuse those police officers of lying and all of that stuff. Oh man, my lawyer had a real good time calling him out on that and be like, "Are you saying that they're lying?" Blah blah. Anyways, I'm not saying law enforcement always tell the truth, but in this case, it was just so ridiculous. But yeah, he was found guilty, and I don't know exactly how this works, but from what I perceived, I thought if someone was found guilty, like they're immediately arrested and thrown in jail. That is not what happened. He was able to like try and appeal for up to a year. And from my understanding, what I was told, basically, he tried appealing for up to a year. And then about a year later, he was ordered to turn himself in. And I think he was sentenced to 5 years, 7 at the most, but it was 3 to 5, which was not long enough, in my opinion, because honestly, I feel like rape is almost, if not as bad as murder. I felt like I felt like who I was destroyed. I mean, I know I personally felt like being raped was worse than murder. Like I wanted to die. There were so many times I just wished I was dead. I thought it would be better to be dead, because I wouldn't have to live with the pain. So he was ordered to turn himself in, and then basically decided to skip country. Oh, I need to mention that while a week before our court case began, his house conveniently burned down right after the neighbors had seen him move all his furniture out of it. And I know of like other insurance scams and stuff that he did, but yeah, that's the kind of person he was. But anyway, so he skips the country, and then at some point later, it was at least a year, maybe a couple of years, he is caught crossing the border from like Panama to Colombia or something like that, and he's extradited back to the United States. It makes national news. Um, he's sent to jail or prison or whatever. And anyways, you think that would be the end of it. And I have to add that during all of this, I mean, during the entire period from the moment that I came out about being raped to us going to court and years afterwards, Um, he and his son and his other cronies, they would drive up and down our street at night to intimidate us. They tried setting our house on fire. I can't tell you how many times they slit my mom's car tires while she was at work. They spread rumors. They tried contacting us in various ways. When we eventually moved, we tried hiding all of our information, somehow managed to like find our phone number and call and try and intimidate us, threaten us. They tried bribing my friends to like testify different things and stuff, like, I mean, it was insane. And, um, some of the, at this point, when he's extradited back to the United States, I'm in the early years of college. Like, I'm trying to go to college. Oh, and I should add that, like, it's very, interesting that, like, the day after the court case in my senior year, my boyfriend, now husband, Carl, his apartment was broken into. Everything was trashed. Nothing was taken. And they took all the pictures of me and Carl off the wall and ripped them. And on the bathroom mirror, they wrote, "I know who you are," or something like that. So, yeah, pretty sure that was, my stepdad or one of his cronies. But anyway, so while in undergrad, I mean, I'm going through so much trauma, y'all. Like, I mean, PTSD, night terrors, depression, severe social anxiety, learning issues that I think I actually have had my whole life, but like that got significantly worse, or at least that I noticed. Just all kinds of stuff. And he hires a private investigator to track me down. And, being raised in the South, like I can't just hang up on people. So this guy would call, his name was Carl Peavy from Florida. And he would call, he called for weeks and trying to, like befriend me and talk to me and ask me to change my testimony and stuff. He eventually offered me like $5,000. Like, well, if you just, change your testimony, we'll give you $5,000. Which, I mean, even at that time, I mean, like that's nothing. But even at that time, I was like, fuck no. Like, you're insulting me. I mean, like, you can't buy me for any price. But if you're gonna make an offer, you should at least start with 100,000. So I don't feel too insulted. Um, but anyways, but when that did happen, like I did answer the phone and I would talk to him. I had a hard time breaking it off. I don't know. I was, just I think part of it is that being like terrified of like older adults or men or whatever. But I had contacted the police. I had contacted a district attorney. They told me to not return, record the calls and stuff. So that's what I did. I think eventually they tracked that guy down. I don't know what happened with that, but um, but once that sort of ended, one of the last things I experienced was, I mean, and all of my information was private at this time, guys. Um, I think it was 2004, maybe. I don't know if I got the year right. And my husband and I were living in Jacksonville on Second Avenue. And I came home from one of my college classes one day. Um, and or I was home. I went home, and after I had been in the house for just a little bit, someone knocks on my door, and it was my ex stepfather's freaking sister. And we stood out on the porch, and honestly, like, I mean, I was afraid, like, my heart rate jumped and stuff like that. But I'm actually so proud of how I handled the situation because she came to me basically be like, you know, like, why are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. Because my ex stepfather's story was always that he didn't do this, that my mom was getting me to do this in order to get back at him. But that's not the kind of person I am. And I didn't have a good relationship with my mom at the time anyway, so I wouldn't have done that for her, even if that had been the case. But the sister talked to me about all of this stuff, and you know, she told me the story she had been told, and then I told her, you know, and it's like, I don't know. I had felt nervous and afraid at first, but when she showed up on my doorstep and she said the things she said, my heart actually felt bad for her because I can imagine being in her shoes. You don't want to believe something like this about, you know, like your brother or someone that you love. Like, I understand that. I sympathize with that. Um, you know, and I tried to, like, very calmly and sincerely tell her that, like, I was sorry, you know, like, that I'm sorry to have to, like, tell you the hard truth, but the hard truth is that this happened. He did this. The story he's telling you is a lie. Um, and I do feel like at the end she believed me. Like, I just felt like I felt like she kind of got a little closure, you know, or something. And I felt like, you know, like hearing it like straight from my mouth, like helped her like maybe accept it or whatever. You know, I'm not sure, but I had that feeling at the end. Like I felt a little bit of a sense of peace. Now, funny aside, I mean, and I told her about all the stuff that I told her about some of the stuff that's happening in the private investigator, and I just thought it was just like when I told her that she asked me how much the private investigator offered me, and when I told her 5,000, she's like, oh well, that's interesting because it was supposed to be 10. I mean, it's still not nearly enough, guys. Like, please don't insult people. Um, but anyways, that was just funny. It's like, oh my god, all the corruption and craziness and stuff, and anyways, the ex stepfather, he spent a few years in jail, not nearly long enough. I think around 2005, 2006, I was contacted that he was up for parole. And I was contacted and I was asked to write a letter stating why he shouldn't be released on parole. Well, I mean, God, so many reasons, you know, all the harassment, all that stuff. But also, this fucker skipped the damn country and you had to extradite him in order to get him there. Like, don't put somebody out on parole that does that kind of stuff. Anyways, I wrote a letter, received a notice telling me that his parole had been denied, and I was like, yay. But then 2 months later, I got a letter saying he was being released. And when I got that letter, and I don't know why, but when I got that letter and was told he was being released, I was just like, it was like I was done. I was like, I can't even think about this anymore. I can't process this. I can't understand, you know, how, you know, like it's denied and now he's getting out. Like, I don't understand this world that we live in. Like, how the fuck does the system work? Yeah, I think the thing is, it doesn't work. That's the problem with it. And so after that, I was very worried for a while that he was going to show up and, you know, basically like for revenge and stuff because he threatened us a lot. And I was incredibly terrified of him. I mean, guys, I had night terrors and all kinds of stuff for, I mean, well over a decade after this experience. And I mean, even, you know, years after he got out of jail, like I was so scared and paranoid that like I would pace our home and constantly like peek through the windows. You know, the slightest noise scared the hell out of me. I mean, like it was so hard and such a struggle. And you know, honestly, I feel like the only thing that like really helped me get through it. I mean, I am a strong person, but you know, sometimes it's hard for me to imagine how I would have gotten through it if I hadn't been for my husband. Like, you know, just supporting me and taking good care of me when I was in bad shape. And uh, I mean, I'm not religious, I'm like spiritual and stuff or whatever, but I mean, I 100% believe that God put Carl in my life to help me and, take care of me. It helped me, heal and stuff. I feel like God's put a lot of things in my life that, now after the fact I can see, okay, like I can see what you're doing there. Um, but God, I'm so so thankful for my husband because I mean, like, seriously, the last couple of decades have just been so freaking hard, and most people aren't aware of what other people are going through. They don't see. I mean, like, because I am very good at masking. I have always been crazy ridiculous about I'm not going to let anybody know how I'm thinking or feeling. I don't want to show any weakness or vulnerability, and I'm going to keep all of my pain and grief inside of me so that nobody can know how much I'm hurting. And I think I'm pretty fucking fantastic at that. Um, and I never wanted people to feel sorry. And that was another reason I didn't, it's like unless I felt like the people I was talking to were right, it's like I like talking about things to get it out of my system and to kind of process it and stuff. But like there's part of me, it's like, I mean, like, yes, it is fine to be, I mean, when people say, I think one of the best responses that people say to me, is, they'll tell me they're so sorry that I went through that, and that sort of thing. But I think there's part of me that was always like, I don't know, struggling with, I don't want people, I would rather people, you know, even though I know that I am in fact a victim, the popular thing now is we call sexual abuse people, we don't call them victims, we call them survivors. And that's what I would like for most people to focus on is that, I went through hell, but I've always been a fighter. Um, but I'm definitely a survivor. And um, wanting people to focus on that and not on the victim part, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, I don't know. But, anyways, thankfully, I never noticed or experienced any sort of retaliation after he got out of prison. And he is still on the Alabama sexual offenders list, so I will occasionally look at that to see where he's at. I know right now he's outside of Huntsville, and I fucking hate how snakes land on their feet. Well, they don't have feet, but you know what I mean. But like his address and all of that was listed. And I saw, so, I Google Earthed it or whatever, and I'm like fuck it, man. Like he's living in a nice big house with multiple cars. It looks like he's not suffering at all. He landed right back on his feet. I don't know how he managed um, to do that. And I had heard at one point that he had remarried a woman with a young son. And that made me really nervous because I really don't think he should be around children. And I wouldn't put it past him to harm a boy um, either. And so, I'd like some answers as to why he was released and, how the hell he like managed to like land on his feet and stuff. But I don't know if I'll ever get those answers. And I've got other things um, worth focusing on. But yeah, life is life is crazy, and yeah, I would actually like to talk about this more and like the details and stuff like that. So if y'all have any questions and stuff like that, they can be uncomfortable questions. I like uncomfortable questions. Um, just comment, send me a message, that sort of thing. And just please, you know, I don't want people to be so paranoid that they don't trust like their children with anyone, like we don't want to live in that kind of world. But you've got to at least be somewhat aware that this is a thing that happens all the time to so many people. And I think the problem is that people just don't want to realize that the world is as shitty as it is. Sometimes I'm not saying the whole world shit, because I mean, like, there's lots of good things in the world, but people don't want to acknowledge that like sexual assault and abuse and stuff is as rampant as it is insidious in our society, that there are people that protect it and allow it to happen for various reasons. And I just want people, to be careful who you leave your kids with, and pay attention to like who are they spending time with, and has their behavior changed at all, and just practice a little more diligence, and just make sure that you're comfortable with who they're with. And if your child tells you that something has happened, fucking believe them. The amount of people that make false reports is incredibly, incredibly low. The majority of people that come out about something, because I'm gonna tell you, coming out about it is really fucking hard. I know for me, coming out about it was almost as hard as the actual experience that I had, because you have to face this like public like shaming and judging and stuff. And of course, thankfully we're getting better about not blaming the victim, but there's still a lot of stigma attached to it. So if someone tells you that something happened to them, something probably freaking happened to them. So yeah. Anyways, I'll end this there, but it's been a long time since that happened to me. But man, it has definitely had a long-term effect on my life. But I'll say, and I've received a lot of compliments from people telling me like they can't believe that so is together and as good as I am after having been through what I did. And my thing is, well, I was always a fighter, and I've always been an optimist and stuff. I'm defiant and stubborn as fuck. And every time I would feel incredibly low or whatever, I would always tell myself, I was like, I'm not gonna let him win. And to me, the win condition was, I'm not gonna let him steal my joy. I'm not gonna let him keep me from being like a loving and joyful person. So if I can just keep, my heart from shattering and my soul from just, dissolving, and continue to see beauty in the world and not be governed by fear or whatever, like to me, that was me, that, like standing up for myself and all of that sort of thing. But also, guys, I've been working on myself for decades. Like, I've practiced all of the like self manipulation, etc. You know, therapy, and just everything. Different things have worked better for me than other things. But yeah, it's been like a long struggle, and I've been fighting the entire time. And there's part of me that's still freaking fighting. So, and I feel like I'm an older sibling, the eldest sibling, older sister. I've always felt very like paternal towards other people, like and I wanted to, when I was a kid, I wanted to be like a knight of the round table. And I've always felt that if I am strong enough to, that if I am able to speak out for other people, because a lot of people can't speak out for themselves, and don't feel bad if you're one of those people, you know, but like I want to be the kind of person that speaks out about things, and up for other people that aren't able to speak out and up for themselves. And, like that's my way of trying to help, um, you know, raise awareness and stop this and stuff. And so I've always felt that it was my duty. If I'm able to do something that other people can't, then I try to do it. So, yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening to my almost 50-minute story. I was really going to try and do a short one, but it didn't happen. Maybe I'll make another video that's even shorter with just the synopsis and then direct people to this one. We'll see.